Hello, trumpet players. In this video, we're going to talk about, mostly for beginners, but you can apply the concept however you want. We're going to talk about the order that beginners should learn their scales in. I believe that it matters what order you practice your scales in. This is especially true for the beginners. This is something new to them. How the scales are introduced to them affects how deeply they impact their learning. It affects how quickly they can learn, how quickly they absorb the material. We don't want to learn the scales, and by the way, I don't teach really scales. I call them tonalization studies because it's not about learning a scale, it's about learning to think in that key, which, like I said, is very important for beginners. The sooner we get them thinking in the key, the better players are going to be earlier on. And you know what? That's a problem with what I see with a lot of materials that are published for the kids, right? Because I think even a year, 2, 3 years into it, I think they're all still thinking in C and trying to remember there's a B flat or trying to remember there's a F sharp, instead of actually changing the way they think when they see that different key signature. So the purpose of my approach is to help establish that kind of thought process for them, you know? And this is based on two general concepts that I have. The first one is the tonalization concept. Now you might have seen my tonalization study books. Those books have tonalization exercises in them, but that is not in and of itself the tonalization concept, the tonalization philosophy. The tonalization philosophy is much bigger than that. And it comes down to this. The more time you spend in one key, the more deeply impacted you are with that one key. So when that means you're going to learn it more quickly. That means you're going to learn it in a way that's going to be more reliable so that when you need it, it's there. That's the first concept. The other concept governing this order of the keys is what I call, and this is a newer concept, the tonalization studies concept comes from the 80s. I figured that one out in the 80s. This one is only about 10 years old. So it's called the Art of Accumulative Practice, which is different from the traditional philosophy of practicing. The traditional philosophy of practicing says you have to practice a minimum of this much every day, or your playing's going to suffer. Right? That's what we're taught. Today, I'm here to tell you it's not true. I teach what I call the art of accumulative practice. And what accumulative practice is that every moment you spend practicing your instrument counts. Every moment takes you that much farther into your progress. If you practice 5 minutes, you're now 5 minutes better than you were 5 minutes ago. If you practice an hour, you're now an hour better. And this is based on, both of these are based on familiarity. I'm big with this familiarity stuff, right? The whole tonalization study concept is based on familiarity. The more time you spend in the key, the more familiar you become with that key. I also started teaching in the 90s about range familiarity because that's how I got my range. You spend time playing notes up to the top of your current range, and you become familiar with that. And it changes the way you play. That, by the way, is in my one range book. So yes, the one range book is part of the accumulative philosophy. And so when we put these two together and look at how should beginners learn their skills, then a certain order comes out of that. And we're going to go through that order. But you know what? I want to also say for those of you who are not beginners, maybe you've already been playing 4 or 5 years, depending on how chaotic, and this is a difficult way to put it, but that's the word I came up with when I was thinking through this. Depending on how chaotic your practice was when you learned the skills. For example, if you sat down and the band director gave you 7 scales to go through, and you learned those all overnight, that's chaos. So there's a good chance that this approach might work for you. The people this won't work for are people who did something else that was not chaotic. Chances are those guys can play too, right? And I'm not saying that this order is better necessarily than everybody else's order. Yes, I am saying it's better. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm not saying that their way is bad. I'm just saying that this way is better. Okay? You will get over and above what's expected in the results from these skills. Now, I want to caution you that this is one small part of my overall system. The order is one small part. We don't just practice scales. I teach what I call tonalization studies, and those studies, depending on the student and their progress, they can be doing as many as 20 scale patterns a day, and all of them in the same key. And a lot of times they're doing this once a day for 10 days before they go on to another key. And as another part of that, before they even do the tonalization studies, they do what I call the major scale expansion studies, so that even before they start the tonalization studies, they've already mastered the scale, right? So, yeah, we're talking about even beginners that have such massive control of their ability to read key signatures and improvise, really improvising too. I've got a young student right now who's improvising full compositions on his trumpet. I'll say, okay, I told him last night, I said, we've got 3 minutes left. Why don't you just improvise for the rest of the lesson? And he created, I think he's in 6th grade right now. He created an entire composition for me with a modulation and everything. It was awesome. So anyway, let's get into this order. I just wanted you to know before we start why we're doing it in this order. Obviously, we start with C. I say obviously. I've heard some people say before that they start their students with weird stuff like, I start my students with F sharp. I heard a teacher say that one time. Um, and the idea was that you're going to jolt them with accidentals so that it's not such a jolt later. And I understand what the concept there. I don't see the learning value in that. I don't think that even comes close to what I'm doing here, okay? Of course, if I did, I'd be doing it that way. Right? Welcome to Eddie's world, huh? Anyway, so we start with C. And then we go to F. And let's verify what we're talking about. You do C, you do the expansion studies in C, and then you do some tonalization studies in C. The absolute beginners don't do, I think, but 4 tonalization studies. And it depends on what their range is at the time. And they do that 10 times. When they've finished C, we do the F one. When they finish F, they go to G, not B flat. Now, so far, kind of normal, right? Here's where my way gets a little bit different. After G, we go to D, not B flat. And the reason I started doing it this way is this gives the students an opportunity to stay in sharps for a while. Then after they finish D, and I'm gonna remind you once more, they do the expansion study first, then they do tonalization studies. And they do whatever tonalization studies they have 10 times at least before they go on to the next key is now B flat. Now, just like with wanting to spend more times in the sharps, now we're going to spend more time in the flats. So we're going to go B flat to E flat. Then E flat, we're going to shift over. Now we're going to go to A. And then A to E once again, so that we spend more time in the sharps. This is that whole familiarity concept. Now, I used to do back and forth, right? 1 flat, 1 sharp, 2 flats, 2 sharps, 3 flats, 3 sharps. I think that's normal. I think that's what most people do. You're not getting the full benefit of the familiarity when you do it that way. So this crisscrossing, I think we're on A now. This crisscrossing actually gives us, for the students, more time in the sharp so that it sinks in. And I've been using the term deeper impact. It leaves a deeper impact. All of this stuff leaves a deeper impact. If you do the expansion studies right, it leaves a deeper impact. If you do the tonalization studies 10 times before you move on to the next one, it leaves a deeper impact. And then doing it in this order, you're spending more time in the sharps, more time in the flats. You're not you're taking away some of the chaos. Okay, so we did E flat, A. Okay, so let's go through this again. C, F, G, D, B flat, E flat, A, E. That's where we were before. E, and then A flat. Right? That's a cool one because they're a major third away from each other. Sounds really cool. A flat to D flat. D flat to B. I hope I'm getting this right. And B to F sharp or G flat. You know, F sharp and G flat, I try to mix it up. I intentionally tried to make all of my materials one or the other so that they wouldn't be favoring one or the other. I don't think I've done such a good job of that. So sometimes I need to go back and look at the books and see what did I do and maybe I don't want to put both in the book. That's right. I just don't want to do that. That said, a lot. I think for etudes that works well. I do a lot of doubling up with the etudes, but for scales, it's just so much space and time to write that stuff out. So now let's talk about why I think this works so well. And I might be using the wrong terminology here. Forgive me if I'm wrong. I remember in a beginner piano class that we were taught tetrachords, and the tetrachord in this piano class, I have to say it that way because if I'm wrong about what this is called, it's embarrassing, right? Um, so C, D, E, F, G is a tetrachord. Da, 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 right? Now, if you put two tetrachords together a fifth apart, you have your major scale. Da, 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 dee, right? You put those two together, you've got a major scale. Now, the cool thing about this is this works for the cycle of fifths, right? So if you go to the, so this will be G, A, B, C, D. If you go D, E, F sharp, G, A, now you have your G major scale with the D tetrachord. Going the other direction, if you go F, A, G, F, G, A, B flat, C, right? Now you have your F major scale. And I believe what happens when we take it the way that we're doing it in this order, you're spending more time in that tetrachord combination. And then you're going like this. When you go from this sharp key to that sharp key, you're still doing this tetrachord. You're still getting 10 more times on this tetrachord before you go to the next key. That's what I think is so awesome about this. I think that's why it works so well, because it's really, really settling in. You know, the tetrachord thing is, it seems like it's just theoretical for us trumpet players because we're just, the valves that we put down don't really coordinate with the tetrachord the way it does on the piano. But when you look at the way the brain remembers this stuff, that tetrachord is there. You can see it in the mistakes that the students make because they'll go to the wrong tetrachord note. In the earlier stages of when they're doing this, they will hit that wrong tetrachord. They're not just accidentally playing a B flat. They're not just accidentally playing an F natural. They're playing a pattern, and that pattern is connected to that tetrachord. So when they spend more time on that tetrachord, on the technique, because we do thirds, we do fourths, we do triads, we do all that stuff, right? When they spend more time on that, it sinks in deeper. It leaves that deeper impact. It creates, more importantly, a greater degree of familiarity. So let's go through this order one more time. We have C, we have F, we've got G, we've got D, we've got B flat, we've got E flat, we've got A, we've got E, we've got A flat, we've got D flat, we've got B, and then we've got F sharp or G flat. Okay? That is the best order to learn your scales in. That is by far the best order to learn your scales in. When a student gets through all 12 scales keys that way, it changes the way they think. Now, the second time we go through it, I make my students go in chromatic order. They do C first, C sharp second, not C sharp, D flat second, D natural. They do E flat, they do E, they do F. We go up in half steps. But that first time, it's extremely important that they get more time in those shared tetrachords before they progress. Because it, like I said, it leaves a deeper impact. Now, I'm going to say one more time, if you're somebody that if you think that maybe you did a real sloppy job of learning the keys, this plan will work for you. This plan will work, okay? It's only those who did some other plan that this might not have an impact on. But if you just tried, yeah, I like that, right? I ask people all the time, what's your practice philosophy? Oh, I just try to get it right, right? And if that's how you learned your scales, then this might actually work for you, even though you might not be a beginner. Okay, it would be a way of relearning. But some things can't be relearned. You can't. It's just like when you drill out a mouthpiece, you can't put that metal back. Okay? And there are certain things about the way the brain works. You can't have a second first impression. Right? That's not possible. So if you had a very structured way, if the way you were taught to play the scales was very structured, but you're still having trouble with the scales, and with the, more importantly, the keys. I keep saying scales because that's what we call them. They're not scales, okay? We're trying to learn how to think in the key. But if you are having trouble but you learn from a system, this may not work for you. I'm sorry to say. And I'm saying that because I've seen it. So anyway, I hope this helps you. I think this one's geared more towards teachers, maybe. But then again, I do get a lot of beginners watching my channel. So if you are a beginner and you haven't really given a lot of effort into learning all the different keys, I strongly recommend, first of all, go get I've got 2 books I strongly recommend for you. One of them is just an ebook, and I think it's only on my website. You have to look for it. It's called the Major Scale Expansion Studies. No, by the way, I do have a book called the Band Scale Expansion Studies. That's a book specifically using the expansion study concept for your band scales. It's the same concept as what we're teaching, but it doesn't have the full range like my scales do. Okay, so we're doing, we want to, if you're interested in this approach, get yourself the scale expansion studies, major scale expansion studies, I think is what it's called. It's an ebook. And then get whatever tonalization studies are for your level. Some of those are physical books. Most of them are just ebooks. If you need help finding that stuff, send me an email or something. Contact me on the website. Contact me down here. And I'll try to find links for you. I think the tonalization books right now are a little bit of a mess in that it's hard to find them. Right? I didn't mean it to be that way, but that's how it ended up being. Anyway, so there you go. If you have questions, please feel free to ask. Other than that, God bless you, and we'll see you guys on the next video. All right.